The old barn stood against the Montana sky like a monument to time itself. 64 years of wind and weather had silvered the wood, warped the boards, settled the foundation into the earth as if it had grown there. William Harrow stood in the doorway with his grandson watching the late afternoon sun paint the valley gold. Robert shifted his weight from one foot to the other. 18 years old, packed and ready. Tomorrow morning he would board the train at Fort Missoula. Tomorrow night he would be one step closer to a war that felt both distant and terrifyingly close. William reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, a carved wooden horse no bigger than his palm. The details had worn smooth over the decades. The legs, the mane, the arch of the neck, all of it shaped by hands and time and the oils of human skin. "Your father gave this back to me when you were born," William said. His voice carried the roughness of age but remained steady. "Said it was time to pass it to the next generation." Robert took the horse, turning it in his fingers. The wood felt warm, alive somehow, despite its age. "I made that in the winter of 1875. William's eyes fixed on something beyond the valley, beyond the present moment. "Made it for a boy who needed to know someone cared whether he lived or died." Robert looked up from the carving. His grandfather rarely spoke about the past. The old man lived in the present, worked the ranch, guided the family with quiet certainty. But now something had shifted in his face, a door opening onto rooms long closed. "That boy wasn't your blood," William continued, "but he became your uncle. Raised 3 children of his own. Those children gave you cousins you grew up with, all because of a choice I made that winter." The sun dropped another degree toward the horizon. Shadows lengthened across the pasture where horses grazed in the autumn grass. Somewhere in the distance, a cow called to her calf. "You're scared," William said. It wasn't a question. Robert's throat tightened. He nodded once. "Good. Fear means you understand what's at stake." William turned the wooden horse in Robert's hands so the head faced forward. "I was 36 years old when I decided to live alone for the rest of my life. I'd made a decision that killed a good man. His widow looked me in the eye and told me my judgment had murdered her husband. She wasn't wrong." Robert waited. His grandfather's words came slowly, deliberately, as if each one cost something to speak. "I thought isolation was safety. Thought if I never made another decision that affected another human being, I could never cause that kind of harm again." William's jaw worked. "Then one November evening, the woman stepped out of the trees with a child in her arms. And I had to choose whether to let them freeze or risk failing them the way I'd failed Marcus Sullivan." And the old man's eyes met his grandson's. "This is the story of that winter. The story of how your family came to be, and why you need to hear it before you go to war." William took a slow breath. The barn door creaked in the wind, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of 64 years falling away. "It started on a cold evening in November 1875. The axe bit into the pine with a sound that cracked across the valley. William Harrow worked with the efficiency of a man who measured his days by tasks completed, not hours passed. The woodpile beside his cabin stood 4 feet high, 8 feet long. Enough to last 2 weeks if he rationed carefully. Enough to see him through the first real storm of winter. He was 36 years old. His hands showed the permanent stains of outdoor labor. His face carried lines carved by sun and wind, and the particular tension that comes from spending 13 months alone. Not lonely, alone. There was a difference. The cabin behind him measured 18 feet by 20. He'd built it himself in the summer of 1874, after he'd walked away from everything he knew. The logs came from ponderosa pines he'd felled and stripped and notched with joints that locked together like puzzle pieces. The roof was split cedar shakes. The chimney was riverstone mortared with mud and straw, and every piece of it represented a choice to stay separate, to remain removed, to never again put another human life at risk through his decisions. Inside the cabin held only what was necessary: a cast-iron stove that bore the maker's mark, Acme Fidelity, a narrow cot with a straw mattress, a table and 2 chairs, though he only ever used one, a trunk containing spare clothes, ammunition, and documents he rarely looked at. Tools hung in precise rows along one wall. A Winchester Model 1873 rifle rested in brackets above the door, cleaned and oiled, 15 rounds in the magazine tube, always ready. He lived by routines that required no thought. Wake before dawn. Check the animals. Break the ice on the water trough. Eat cornmeal mush and coffee. Work until the light failed. Eat salt pork and beans. Sit by the stove until exhaustion made sleep possible. Repeat. The 8 horses in his small barn were good Montana stock, a mix of Morgan breeding and Mustang toughness. He'd purchased them with money saved from 7 years of trail work. Money he'd earned before the storm, before the decision, before Marcus Sullivan died in the mud with hypothermia, stealing the warmth from his body, while William made calculations about herd position and timeline instead of human life. The memory came without warning, as it always did. September of 1874. The trail drive from Texas to Montana. 1,800 head of longhorn cattle, 11 men, William as trail boss. He'd made the drive 4 times before. Knew the routes, the river crossings, the places where grass grew thick and water ran clear. His reputation had earned him the position. Men trusted his judgment. Marcus Sullivan had been 30 years old, Irish immigrant, 3 years in Montana, married with 2 sons and a pregnant wife back in Helena. He'd hired on for the wages, $50 for 5 months of work. Enough to buy winter supplies and maybe some cloth for his wife to make a dress. The storm had built fast on the Wyoming high plains. William had seen the clouds, felt the temperature drop, watched the cattle grow restive. They were 12 miles from South Pass Creek. If they pushed hard, they could make it before the storm hit full force. Make camp with water and some shelter from the bluffs. Marcus had voiced concern. "Boss, those clouds look bad. Maybe we should hold here." William remembered his exact response. "We can make it. Mount up." Arrogance born of past success. Confidence that his judgment would prove correct again. The belief that he could read weather and terrain better than caution suggested. The storm hit 3 miles from the creek. Wind and rain and temperatures that plummeted 20 degrees in 30 minutes. Visibility dropped to nothing. The herd scattered. The men fought to keep themselves in the saddle, let alone keep the cattle together. Marcus's horse was a green Mustang, barely broken. Good in normal conditions, but prone to panic. When lightning cracked close enough to light the horse's eyes, the animal bolted, slipped on wet rock, went down hard with Marcus beneath it. William didn't see it happen. Didn't know Marcus was gone until they reached the creek 90 minutes later and counted heads. 11 men had started the day. 10 arrived at camp. They found Marcus 2 hours after that. Found him in a ravine, paralyzed from the waist down where his back had struck a boulder. Hypothermia had already set in. His lips were blue, his breathing shallow and irregular. He lived another 4 hours, long enough to speak, long enough to ask William to tell his boys he'd tried to come home, long enough to make William promise to look after his family if something happened. Then Marcus Sullivan died because William Harrow had chosen schedule over safety. William had ridden to Helena alone, had faced Martha Sullivan in her small house with its carefully tended garden and patched curtains, had told her that her husband was dead because the trail boss had pushed too hard in bad weather. She'd stood there holding her belly, 7 months pregnant, with 2 boys clinging to her skirts. Jack was 8, Samuel was 6. They'd looked at William with eyes that understood their father wasn't coming home. Martha had spoken quietly, precisely. "Your judgment killed him. Money won't bring him back." She'd refused the wages William tried to give her, refused his offer to help with the burial expenses, refused everything except the truth, that William's decision had cost her husband his life. William had left the trail after that, resigned his position, used his savings to purchase 160 acres in a valley 35 miles from Bozeman, built the cabin, bought the horses, removed himself from any situation where his judgment might harm another human being. 13 months alone, 400 days of isolation, and still Marcus Sullivan's blue lips and shallow breathing visited him every night before sleep came. The axe struck the log again. The wood split clean. William bent to stack the pieces, hands moving through familiar motions, while his mind walked paths it had traveled 10,000 times. He straightened, stretching the tightness from his lower back. The temperature had dropped since morning. He could smell snow coming. Not tonight, but soon, maybe tomorrow. The kind of early winter storm that turned the mountains white and made travel impossible for days. He gathered an armload of split wood and turned toward the cabin. That's when he saw the movement. 200 yards out near the tree line where ponderosa pines clustered thick. Something shifted against the pattern of trunk and shadow. Not wind, not animal. The movement held purpose, calculation, the deliberate stillness of something trying not to be seen. William's hands remained steady on the firewood. He didn't stare, didn't make his observation obvious. Just let his eyes register the details while his body continued its task. A woman, small frame, perhaps 5'3", something pressed against her chest. A bundle. No, not a bundle. A child. The size suggested maybe 5 years old. She stood partially concealed behind a leaning trunk watching him. How long had she been there? How long had she observed before he noticed? Her clothing was a mix of styles. Leather leggings in the Lakota pattern, a cotton dress worn thin at the elbows, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders that might have been trading post wool. Her hair was long and dark loose around her face. The child didn't move, didn't make a sound. That stillness was wrong. Children that age fidgeted, shifted weight, made noise. This one pressed against its mother, like it had learned that survival depended on invisibility. William walked to the cabin, set the wood beside the door, straightened and looked directly at the tree line. The woman tensed. He could see it even at this distance. Her body preparing to run, to flee, to disappear back into the forest. He didn't call out. Experience from the trail had taught him that loud voices often frightened more than they communicated. Instead, he stepped away from the door, moved back 5 paces, opened the door wide so she could see inside. The stove, the simple furniture, the absence of threat. Then he turned and walked to the barn, left the door to his home standing open, left the choice to her. The barn smelled of hay and horse and leather. He checked the water trough, though he'd checked it that morning. Adjusted feed that didn't need adjusting. Gave her time to decide. When he emerged 15 minutes later, she was still there. She'd moved closer, maybe 50 yards from the cabin now. She'd stopped at the edge of the cleared ground, standing in the last of the daylight, like someone trying to cross a border that might disappear if she hesitated too long. William walked to the woodpile, gathered another armload, carried it inside the cabin and began building up the fire in the stove. He left the door open behind him. Not an invitation, just space. Room for her to choose. The stove took the kindling quickly. Flames licked up around the split pine, releasing the sharp smell of burning resin. He adjusted the damper to draw air properly, added larger pieces. The heat began to radiate outward, pushing back the cold that seeped through the walls. He heard her footsteps on the porch, soft, hesitant, the weight of someone who'd learned to move quietly. William moved to the far side of the room, stood near the window where he could see out but wasn't blocking her path to the door. Kept his hands visible, away from his body. She appeared in the doorway. Up close, he could see more. Her face showed the dust of long travel and the particular exhaustion that comes from fear sustained too long. Her eyes were dark and sharp, taking in every detail of the cabin in seconds, looking for weapons, for other people, for any sign that this was a trap. The child was a boy, 5 years old, maybe 6. His face was thin, cheekbones too prominent, malnutrition. His lips showed the cracks of dehydration. His eyes were enormous and watched William with the wariness of prey animal watching a predator. The boy's hand gripped his mother's dress with white-knuckled intensity. His other hand clutched a small carved figure, a horse, worn smooth with handling. William's throat tightened. Someone had made that for the boy. Someone who cared enough to shape wood into something a child could hold on to. The woman's breathing was shallow but controlled. She'd positioned herself between William and the child without seeming to move. Every muscle in her body was coiled, ready to run, ready to fight if running wasn't possible. William reached slowly for a folded blanket he kept on the trunk. Moved with deliberate care, making each action visible and predictable. Placed the blanket on the chair nearest the stove. Stepped back. She watched him without blinking. Read his movements the way someone reads text. Looking for lies, for manipulation, for violence waiting to reveal itself. He moved to the far corner, leaned against the wall, put distance between them. Minutes passed. The fire crackled. Wind brushed against the walls. Somewhere outside, one of the horses whinnied. The woman took one step inside, then another. The child moved with her, pressed against her side like they were one organism. She reached the chair. Her hand touched the blanket. felt the wool testing its quality, its warmth. Her fingers trembled, not from fear. From cold that had penetrated deep, the kind of cold that comes from days of exposure and insufficient shelter. She wrapped the blanket around the boy first. His small body disappeared into the fabric. Only his face remained visible, those enormous eyes still fixed on William. For the first time, the woman spoke. Her voice came out hoarse, unused. "We won't stay long." The words weren't asking permission, weren't expressing gratitude. They were establishing terms, setting boundaries, making clear that this was temporary, that she wouldn't become a burden, that she expected nothing beyond the warmth of one night. William nodded once, didn't speak yet, let her control the pace of this encounter. He moved to the small table where he kept supplies, measured cornmeal from a sack, added water from the bucket, mixed it with molasses and a pinch of salt, set the bowl on the stove to warm. The smell of cooking food changed something in the boy. William saw it. The child's body shifted slightly toward the scent, hunger breaking through the careful stillness. When the mush was ready, William placed it on the table with a spoon, stepped back to his corner, waited. The woman approached the table like someone approaching a snare. Checked the food, checked William, checked the door, making sure all her exits remained open. She took the bowl and carried it back to the chair by the stove, sat with the boy in her lap, fed him slowly, one careful spoonful at a time, each bite going to him, none to herself. William watched her discipline, her focus, the way she monitored every sound, every shift in the cabin while simultaneously caring for her child. This was a woman who'd survived through vigilance. Only after the boy had eaten did she take food for herself. William prepared another bowl without comment, placed it on the table, returned to his position. She ate standing up, never fully relaxing, never letting her guard settle. The boy fell asleep first. Real sleep, not the half-aware dozing of someone expecting danger. His breathing evened out. His hand loosened its grip on the wooden horse. His small body went limp in his mother's arms with the sudden, complete collapse that only exhausted children achieve. The woman's eyes welled. She blinked rapidly, refusing to let the tears fall. But William saw them, saw the relief that her child could sleep without fear, if only for one night. She stood and moved to the floor beside the stove, settling onto the blanket he'd given her. Positioned the boy on the warmth radiating from the cast iron. Kept herself between the child and William, still protecting, still vigilant. William pulled his bedroll from the trunk and laid it in the far corner, the farthest point from them, creating maximum distance. He lay down fully clothed, kept his boots on. The rifle remained above the door, but within reach if needed. The lamp burned low. Shadows moved across the ceiling. Outside, the wind picked up, the first edge of the storm touching the valley. William didn't sleep. He listened to the woman's breathing, heard how it remained quick and shallow for the first hour. Heard how she shifted position, often checking the boy, checking the door, maintaining awareness, even as exhaustion pulled at her. Sometime past midnight, her breathing finally deepened, sleep taking her, despite her will to remain alert. William watched the window, watched the darkness beyond the glass, and thought about choices, about Marcus Sullivan dying in the cold, about this woman and child who'd appeared from the forest with nowhere else to go, about responsibility and failure, and the fear of making another decision that would cost someone their life. The storm arrived before dawn, wind rattling the shutters, the first snow beginning to fall, and in the morning William Harrow would have to decide what to do about the two people sleeping by his stove. Dawn came gray and cold. William woke to the sound of snow hitting the windows, not the gentle fall of early season flurries. This was the hard-driving snow that meant business, the kind that piled up fast and made the world disappear under white. He rose quietly. The woman was already awake, sitting with her back against the wall, the boy still sleeping in her lap. Her eyes tracked William's movements as he added wood to the stove and set water to boil for coffee. He worked without speaking, pulled dried venison from his stores, found the last of his bread, now several days old but still edible, set it on the table along with tin plates and cups. The woman watched all of it. When he stepped away, she rose carefully, settling the boy on the blanket, approached the table, took food back to her position by the stove. William poured coffee. The rich smell filled the cabin. He placed a cup on the floor within her reach. She nodded once, the first acknowledgement of his actions. They ate in silence. The boy woke slowly, rubbing his eyes, looked around the cabin with confusion, then fear, then a kind of tentative acceptance when he saw his mother calm and eating. After breakfast, William pulled on his heavy coat. Need to check the animals. The woman tensed. He was leaving them alone in his cabin. It was a test of sorts. Would she run? Would she go through his things, or would she simply wait? He stepped into the storm. The wind cut through his coat immediately. Snow had already accumulated 3 inches. The temperature had dropped well below freezing. Anyone traveling in this would be risking their life. The barn provided shelter from the wind. The horses shifted in their stalls, restless from the storm sounds, but calm enough. He checked each one, ran his hands over their legs, ensured their water wasn't freezing over. When he returned to the cabin 20 minutes later, the woman had moved to the window. She'd been watching for him, making sure he came back, making sure he didn't ride away to get help or law enforcement or whoever she was running from. The boy sat by the stove now, the wooden horse clutched in both hands. He was making small sounds, not words, just soft humming noises. The first sounds William had heard him make. Over the next 3 days, a pattern formed. The storm kept them trapped inside. William maintained the fire ration, the food melted snow for water. The woman helped without being asked. She understood the work that survival required. She organized his supplies, creating order from the random arrangement of a man who'd been alone too long. Sorted food stores by type. Folded clothes with crisp, efficient movements. Mended a tear in a spare shirt with stitches, so even they might have been done by a machine. The boy followed William at a distance, never close enough to touch, but watching, learning. When William carved new notches in wood to repair a chair leg, the boy picked up a stick and mimicked the motions. On the second day, the boy laughed. It happened without warning. William was demonstrating how to test a fence post by pushing on it, checking for rot. The post wasn't in the cabin, of course. They were inside because of the storm. But he was explaining the principle using a piece of firewood. He pushed on the wood. It tipped over. Simple physics. The boy standing 6 feet away with his stick pushed on nothing, made the same motion, watched his invisible fence post fall, and laughed. The sound was brief, a short, bright burst of joy that seemed to surprise the boy as much as anyone. His hand flew to his mouth. His eyes went wide. The woman froze. Her hands, which had been working on mending another shirt, went completely still. She stared at her son, then tears came. She didn't make a sound, didn't sob. Just silent tears streaming down her face while she covered her mouth with one hand. William looked away, gave her the privacy to break down without an audience, continued his demonstration with the firewood, pretending he hadn't noticed. But something in his chest felt different, lighter, as if a door he'd kept locked had opened just a crack. That night, after the boy was asleep, the woman spoke again. "I need to tell you something." William set down the piece of leather he'd been working on, waited. "My name is Sarah." She paused as if the name itself was dangerous to speak. "My son is Tommy." "William Harrow," she nodded. She'd probably already known, probably asked around before approaching his cabin. Or maybe she'd just taken a desperate chance on a stranger. "We're running from the Indian agency at Fort Benton." The words hung in the air. William kept his face neutral, but his mind started working through implications. "My husband died in April, Michael Brennan. We had a homestead near Fort Benton. After he was killed, the agency said I couldn't raise Tommy alone. Said my mother's blood made me unfit." She spoke in short sentences, stating facts without emotion, as if emotion would break her ability to speak at all. "They wanted to send Tommy to a mission school, separate him from me. I refused. They put me in protective custody. I escaped 3 weeks ago." William understood now. The fear, the careful watching, the readiness to run. "There's an agent named Crawford. He's looking for us. He has men helping him track us." "How many men?" "2, maybe 3. She met his eyes. "One of them is a deputy marshal named Jack Sullivan." William went very still. "You know him?" Sarah asked. "I know his father." William's voice came out rough. "Knew his father, Marcus Sullivan. He's dead." Sarah waited for more. "I was trail boss on a drive from Texas, September of '74. Storm came in fast. Marcus's horse went down. He died from the injuries and hypothermia. He didn't say the rest. Didn't say it was his fault. Didn't say Marcus's widow blamed him. Didn't say he had been running from that decision for 13 months. This Jack Sullivan, William continued, he's tracking you on Crawford's orders. Yes. And if he finds you here, he'll take Tommy. Yes. William stood, walked to the window. The storm had eased slightly, but snow still fell, already a foot deep and more coming. How long do we have? I don't know. I've been careful with tracks, but they're good. Maybe a week, maybe less. William thought about Marcus Sullivan, about Jack Sullivan, who would be 31 now, about choices and consequences and the weight of responsibility, about a woman who'd lost her husband and was fighting to keep her son, about a boy who'd just laughed for the first time in months. There's a legal option, William said slowly. Montana territory recognizes common law marriage. If we married legally, Tommy would become my son under the law. Crawford couldn't take a citizen's child without proving abuse. Sarah stared at him. Why would you do that? You don't know us. Because it's right, because Crawford's abusing his authority. William turned from the window. And because Tommy called me Papa yesterday when he thought I couldn't hear him. Sarah's breath caught. He did. Half asleep, confused. But yes. They looked at each other across the cabin. Two people marked by loss, brought together by circumstance, facing a choice that would bind them legally if not emotionally. I'm not asking for rescue, Sarah said firmly. I can work. I can contribute. If we do this, it's partnership. Equal. Understood. And I won't pretend to feel things I don't. If this is just legal protection, I need to know that clearly. William considered the question. I don't know what this is, but I know Tommy needs protection. And I know I'm tired of running from responsibility. Sarah studied his face for a long moment, reading him the way she'd been reading him since she arrived, looking for laws for selfishness, for the hidden motives that men so often carried. Whatever she saw, it satisfied something. Then we have an agreement, she said. They shook hands across the space between them. A formal gesture. A contract sealed. Outside, the storm intensified again. Wind howling around the cabin corners. Snow piling deeper, cutting them off from the world beyond the valley. And somewhere out there, Jack Sullivan and Agent Crawford were tracking them through the winter landscape. The next morning, Tommy woke early. He climbed out of his blankets and walked directly to William, stood in front of him, small and thin and very serious. Are you going to be my papa? He asked. The question came out clear and direct. No confusion, no childish uncertainty. Just a boy who needed to know if the adult in front of him could be trusted. William knelt down, put himself at eye level with the child. If that's what you want, I'll do my best to be a good one. Tommy considered this. Then he held out his wooden horse, offered it to William. William took it carefully, turned it in his hands, felt the smoothness of wood shaped by someone who'd cared about detail and craft. Your first papa made this for you, William asked. Tommy nodded. He said horses are strong, said I should be strong too. Your first papa was right, and he loved you very much. I know. Tommy's voice was small but certain. Mama tells me stories about him. Good, you should remember him. He was a good man. Tommy looked at the horse in William's hands, then back at William's face. Can I have two papas? One who's gone and one who's here? William's throat tightened. Yes, you can love them both. Tommy nodded, took the horse back. Then in a gesture that broke something open in William's chest, the boy reached out and hugged him, arms wrapping around William's neck, small body trusting completely. William hugged back, carefully, the way someone holds something precious and fragile. Sarah watched from across the room. When William looked at her, he saw tears on her face again. But this time she was smiling through them. The storm broke that afternoon. The sun emerged, turning the snow-covered valley into something bright and almost painful to look at. William ventured outside to clear paths to the barn and assess the damage. That's when he found the tracks. Boot prints, recent, maybe 6 hours old. Someone had approached the cabin during the night, stopped about 100 yards out, stood there for some time based on how the snow had been disturbed, then circled around to the barn. William followed the trail, found where the person had looked through gaps in the barn wall, counted the horses, assessed the supplies, then the tracks led away, back toward the south, toward Bozeman, Scout. Someone checking the cabin to see who lived here, reporting back to someone else. William returned to the cabin and found Sarah organizing supplies near the table. Tommy was playing with his carved animals on the floor, making soft sounds as he moved them through imaginary landscapes. "They've found us," William said quietly. Sarah's hands stilled. "How do you know it tracks? Someone was here during the night." Crawford, "Don't know, but someone's watching, which means they'll be back." Sarah's face went pale, but her voice remained steady. "When?" "Soon. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe tonight." She looked at Tommy, then back at William. "What do we do?" Before William could answer, they heard it. The sound of horses. Multiple riders approaching from the south. William moved to the window, counted 3 men. He recognized one of them immediately, even at a distance. Jack Sullivan, 31 years old now, taller than his father had been, riding with the confidence of someone who'd earned his authority. The other 2 men William didn't know. One was heavy-set, wearing the kind of coat that marked him as someone from an office rather than the frontier. The other was lean and weathered, a tracker by the look of him. "It's them," Sarah breathed. She'd moved to the window beside him. "Crawford's the heavy one. The tracker is Hayes." William's mind worked through options. Let them search and find nothing, deny everything. Run number or running wouldn't work. Not with a tracker like Hayes, not with winter coming on hard, which left confrontation. William turned to Sarah. "Get Tommy into the root cellar. Under the floor. Don't make a sound no matter what you hear." "William, now, quickly!" Sarah grabbed Tommy. The boy started to protest, but she covered his mouth with her hand, moved to the corner where William kept his root vegetables, pulled up the concealed trap door, disappeared into the darkness below with her son. William replaced the door, moved the table over it, scattered supplies on top to make it look undisturbed. Then he opened the cabin door and stepped outside to face the men who'd come to take away the family he'd just promised to protect. The 3 riders stopped 50 yards from the cabin. Steam rose from their horses in the cold air. The animals shifted weight, restless after the long ride through snow. William stood on his porch, hands visible and empty. He'd left the rifle inside. Taking it out now would only escalate what was already a dangerous situation. The heavy-set man in the office coat dismounted first. He moved with the stiffness of someone unused to long rides. His face was red from cold and exertion. When he spoke, his voice carried the sharp edge of bureaucratic authority. "William Harrow." "That's right. I'm Agent Thomas Crawford, Bureau of Indian Affairs. This is Deputy Marshal Jack Sullivan and Luther Hayes, contracted tracker." Crawford pulled papers from his coat. "We're looking for a woman named Sarah Brennan and her son Thomas. We have reason to believe they may be in this area." William's eyes moved to Jack Sullivan. The man sat his horse with the easy posture of someone born to the saddle. His face showed the same strong bones his father had carried, the same direct gaze. But where Marcus had been quick to smile, Jack's expression remained neutral, professional, giving nothing away. Their eyes met. William saw the recognition flash across Jack's face, saw the moment when Jack placed him, saw something complex move behind those eyes. Anger, maybe, or grief, or the weight of unfinished business between them. "Deputy Sullivan," William said quietly. "Harrow." Jack's voice was level. "Been some years." Crawford looked between them. "You 2 know each other." "We've met," Jack said. "Nothing more." Crawford turned back to William. "The woman and boy, have you seen them?" "I live alone, don't get many visitors." "That's not what I asked." "Then let me be clearer. There's no woman or child here. Just me and my horses." Crawford's face tightened. "Mr. Harrow, harboring agency wards is a federal offense. If you're lying, I can have you arrested." "By what authority?" William kept his voice calm. "This is Montana territory. You'd need territorial approval for any arrest on private land. I have federal authority for matters concerning Indian affairs. Sarah Brennan is the widow of an Irish settler. Legal marriage. That makes her and her son citizens, not agency wards." Crawford's eyes narrowed. "You seem to know a lot about someone you claim you haven't seen." William cursed himself internally. He'd said too much, revealed knowledge he shouldn't have. Jack spoke up. "Mr. Harrow has a point about jurisdiction, Crawford. We'd need proper documentation to search a private residence." "We have probable cause," Crawford shot back. "Hayes tracked them to this area." Luther Hayes, the tracker, had been silent until now. He dismounted slowly, studying the ground around the cabin with the focused attention of someone who read stories in disturbed snow and broken twigs. He walked a slow circle around the cleared area, knelt near the porch, stood and moved toward the barn. William watched him carefully. Hayes was good, very good. He'd see the second set of boot prints, the smaller ones. The tracks that showed someone lighter and shorter had been moving between cabin and barn for days. Hayes completed his circuit and returned to Crawford. Spoke quietly, but William caught most of it. Two people living here, maybe three, smaller prints, woman-sized, and child prints near the door. Crawford's face lit with vindication. There, probable cause. We're searching the cabin. Jack dismounted, moved to stand between Crawford and the porch. Let me talk to him first. Deputy, give me 5 minutes. Jack's tone made it clear he wasn't asking permission. Crawford's jaw worked, but he nodded, stepped back toward his horse. Jack approached William, climbed the porch steps slowly. When he was close enough that the others couldn't hear, he spoke in a low voice. My father died because of your decision. William nodded. I know. Spent a lot of years angry about that. You have every right. Jack studied William's face. But I also spent a lot of years learning what my father tried to teach me, about judgment, about decisions made in bad circumstances. He paused, looked back at Crawford, then at William again. He said a man makes the best decision he can with what he knows at the time. Sometimes it goes wrong, but if his heart was right, you forgive him. William's throat tightened. I'm not here to settle old scores, Harrow, but I am here to do a job. Jack's voice remained quiet. Crawford wants that boy in a mission school. Says it's for his own good. But I've seen those schools, seen what happens to children there. Then why are you helping him? Because I'm a lawman, and until a judge says different, Crawford has authority over agency matters. Jack glanced toward the cabin door. But if there were another way, a legal way, I wouldn't stand in the path of it. William absorbed the meaning behind the words. Jack was offering something. Room to maneuver. Time to find a solution. How long do I have? Crawford wants to search now. I can slow him down for maybe an hour. After that, if he finds them, I have to take them in. That's the law. And if he doesn't find them, Jack's eyes held William's. Then I'd suggest whoever he's looking for should find a way to change their legal status before we come back. Because we will come back. With proper territorial warrants next time. He turned and walked back down the steps. Spoke to Crawford in a normal voice. Place looks clear to me, just one man living alone. But if you want to search anyway, we need to do it by the book. No breaking property, no destroying his possessions. Crawford pushed past him toward the cabin. Jack and Hayes followed. The search took 20 minutes. Crawford was thorough and increasingly frustrated. He tore through William's meager possessions, opened the trunk, checked under the bed, examined every corner of the single-room cabin. Hayes moved more methodically, studied the floorboards, tapped walls listening for hollow spaces, walked the perimeter checking for false walls or hidden compartments. He stopped near the table, knelt down, ran his hand along the floorboards beneath it. William's pulse hammered. The trap door was right there, right under Hayes's fingers. One hard pull and he'd reveal Sarah and Tommy hiding below. Hayes's hand hovered over the seam where the door met the floor. His fingers traced the line. Then he stood, moved to the next section of wall. Crawford emerged from checking William's clothes trunk. Nothing. How is that possible, Hayes? You said the tracks led here. They did, but tracks don't tell you how long ago. Could be this woman passed through days ago. Kept moving north. It was a lie. Hayes knew it. William knew it. And from the slight narrowing of Jack's eyes, he suspected too. But Hayes held Crawford's gaze steadily. Want me to search outside, check the barn? They searched the barn next, found 8 horses, some tack, stored feed. Nothing more. Crawford stood in the yard, face red with more than cold now. This doesn't make sense. The tracks led directly here. Storm would have covered a lot, Hayes said. If she moved on before the worst of it hit, we'd lose her trail. Jack mounted his horse. We should head back to Bozeman, get proper warrants and documentation. Come back with territorial authority. By then she could be in Canada, Crawford protested. Then we'd better move fast. Jack looked down at William. You have any travel plans, Mr. Harrow? Might go into Bozeman for supplies before the next storm. Never know when you'll get snowed in out here. Might see you in town then. Jack's eyes held meaning. Judge Morton's circuit is coming through. He'll be available to handle legal matters. Marriage certificates, adoptions, that sort of thing. William nodded slowly. Good to know. Crawford climbed back on his horse. This isn't over, Harrow. If I find out you lied to a federal agent, you'll face charges. I told you the truth. There's no woman or a child in my cabin. Which was technically accurate. They were under it, not in it. The three men rode away. William stood on his porch and watched until they disappeared into the tree line. Then he waited another 30 minutes, making sure they weren't circling back, making sure this wasn't a trap to catch him revealing the hiding place. Finally, he went inside, moved the table, opened the trap door. Sarah climbed out first, face pale. Tommy came after, tears streaking his cheeks. The boy had been silent, the whole time, hand clamped over his own mouth, knowing that one sound could destroy them. As soon as he was free, Tommy ran to William, wrapped his arms around William's legs and held on. "Papa," the boy whispered, "don't let them take me." William lifted Tommy, held the shaking child against his chest. "I won't. I promise." Sarah stood unsteadily. Her legs had cramped from being still so long in the confined space. "What happens now?" "We go to Bozeman, get married legally, make Tommy my son under the law. Crawford can't touch him then. They'll be watching for us, following. Then we leave tonight before they can set up surveillance." Sarah looked at her son in William's arms, looked at the man who'd just lied to federal agents to protect them, who'd made promises he might not be able to keep. "Why are you doing this?" Her voice carried genuine confusion. "You could have handed us over, stayed safe." William thought about Marcus Sullivan, about 13 months of isolation, about the choice to protect his decision-making ability by avoiding all decisions, about Tommy calling him Papa. "Because I've spent over a year running from responsibility, and I'm tired of it." He met her eyes. "Because you and Tommy matter, and Crawford's wrong. That's reason enough." The storm returned that night, harder than before. Snow fell so thick that visibility dropped to arm's length. Wind screamed around the cabin corners. The temperature plummeted below zero. No one could travel in this, not William and Sarah, but also not Crawford and his men. They were trapped, all of them, the storm making its own decisions about what would happen next. 3 days. That's how long the blizzard lasted. 3 days of being confined to the small cabin. 3 people learning to exist in close quarters, learning each other's rhythms and habits and the small accommodations that make shared space bearable. The first day was careful, polite, everyone moving through this space with exaggerated consideration. Sarah and Tommy staying near the stove, William working on equipment maintenance at the table. Minimal conversation, maximum distance within the limited room. Tommy played quietly with his wooden horse, made small sounds but no words. Watched William with the focused attention of a child trying to understand the adult who would shape his future. Sarah mended clothes, organized supplies, did the work of managing a household without making it seem like she was taking over William's space. William kept the fire perfect, maintained the exact temperature that kept the cabin warm, but didn't waste wood. He'd lived alone long enough to have the process down to a science. Every piece of split pine calculated, every adjustment to the damper timed precisely. But now he was aware of the others watching, learning his methods, Sarah especially. She absorbed information the way dry ground absorbs rain, watched how he checked the draft, how he positioned logs for maximum burn, how he used small kindling to restart flames that threatened to die. By the second morning, she was helping without being asked, handing him the right size wood before he reached for it, adjusting the damper when she saw the flames getting too high or too low. "You worked at a trading post," William said. Not a question, a statement based on observation. "For 6 years, before Michael and I married." Sarah placed another log on the fire. "Learned to read, weather, manage inventory, keep accounts. The trader said I was better at organization than most of his white employees." "I believe it." She glanced at him. "That doesn't bother you that I'm good at things white women aren't supposed to know? Why would it being good at things is useful?" Such a simple statement. But Sarah's expression softened. She'd spent years being told her competence was suspicious, that a woman with Indian blood couldn't possibly understand business or weather or the things that white society claimed as exclusively theirs. William just accepted it as fact, saw the skills and valued them without questioning their source. Tommy approached while they worked, stood between them, watching the fire. "Can I help?" His voice was quiet but clear. William considered. "Fire's dangerous, but you could hand me kindling, the small pieces." Tommy's face lit up. He gathered thin sticks from the wood box, presented them to William with both hands like an offering. "Perfect size," William said. "See how these catch first. Small pieces burn hot and fast. Big pieces burn slow and long. You need both. Why, small pieces start the fire. Big pieces keep it going." Tommy absorbed this, gathered more kindling, organized it by size without being told, creating his own system for understanding. Sarah watched her son engage with William, watched the patience William showed, the way he explained without talking down, the way he let Tommy figure things out rather than doing everything for him. That night after Tommy was asleep, Sarah spoke. "I need to tell you about Michael." William set down the piece of harness he was repairing, listened. "We married because it was practical. He needed someone who understood the land. I needed someone who could give me legal status. We were honest about it from the start." She stared at the fire, but somewhere along the way it became real. Not passionate, not like the poems white people write, but solid, dependable. "We chose each other every day. That's what made it love." "That's the best kind," William said. "Is it?" She looked at him. "You've never married?" "No, spent most of my adult life on cattle trails. Not a life that allowed for family." "Did you want one?" William thought about it. "Never let myself think about it. Trail work was all I knew. And now I'm thinking about a lot of things I never let myself consider before." The wind rattled the shutters. Snow hissed against the glass. "If we do this," Sarah said carefully, "if we marry for Tommy's protection, I need to know what you expect. Nothing beyond what you're willing to give." "That's not an answer." William set down his work completely, turned to face her. "I expect partnership, shared work, honesty. Beyond that, I don't know. We'd be building something new, making rules as we go. And if it doesn't work, if we can't live together, then we figure that out when it happens. But for now, Tommy needs protection. That's what matters most." Sarah nodded slowly. "I can agree to that." They sat in silence. The fire crackled. Tommy's breathing stayed deep and even in sleep. "Jack Sullivan gave us a chance," William said. "He could have arrested me for lying to Crawford, could have torn this place apart until he found you. But he gave us time." "Why would he do that?" "Because his father taught him about mercy, even though I'm the reason his father's dead." Sarah's eyes widened slightly. "You killed his father." "Not directly, but my decision led to his death." William explained the storm, the choice to push forward Marcus's fall, all of it in plain language with no attempt to soften his responsibility. When he finished, Sarah was quiet for a long time. "You carry that every day," she finally said. "Yes." "That's why you were alone." "Yes." "And now you're choosing to take responsibility again, for strangers, even though you're terrified it will go wrong." William met her eyes. "I'm terrified every minute. But Tommy called me Papa, and I can't let fear make my decisions anymore." Sarah reached across the space between them, placed her hand on his. A brief touch, warm and solid and real. "Then we'll be terrified together." On the third day, the storm broke. Weak sunlight filtered through clouds. The wind died to occasional gusts. Snow had piled 3 feet deep in places. Drifts against the cabin reached the bottom of the windows. William ventured outside to check the barn. The horses were restless but healthy. He dug paths through the snow, fed and watered the animals, checked for damage from the storm. When he returned, Sarah had prepared food. Real food. Not just the survival rations William had been eating. She'd found dried herbs he didn't even know he had, mixed them with venison to create something that actually tasted good. Tommy ate with enthusiasm, first solid appetite William had seen from the boy. "We need to leave tomorrow," William said. "While the roads are still passable, but before Crawford expects anyone to travel." "It's 40 miles to Bozeman," Sarah said, "through snow, with a child." We'll take the wagon, pack warm, go slow and careful. What if we meet them on the road? Then we tell the truth. We're going to Bozeman to get married. Nothing illegal about that. Sarah considered this. And if Crawford tries to stop us, Jack gave us until they get proper warrants. We'll be married before those warrants exist. You trust Jack Sullivan, the son of the man you killed. William thought about the look in Jack's eyes, the way he'd slowed Crawford down, the warning about Judge Morton's circuit. I think Jack understands what's right even when it's complicated. His father raised him that way. That evening they prepared, packed supplies for the journey, sorted what was essential from what could be left behind. William checked the wagon, greased the axles, examined the wheels for cracks or weaknesses. Sarah went through Tommy's limited possessions: the wooden horse, a few clothes, a carved figure that might have been a dog or possibly a wolf. Everything he owned fit in a small bundle. When we get to town, Sarah said, people will stare. They'll talk. Let them. A white man marrying an Indian woman, they'll assume things. I don't care what they assume. Sarah looked at him steadily. You say that now, but living it is different. The comments, the looks, the way shopkeepers might refuse service, the way other families might keep their children away from Tommy. Then we'll find better shopkeepers, better families. It's not that simple. It is to me. William met her eyes. I'm not doing this to make friends in Bozeman. I'm doing it because it's right. The rest doesn't matter. Tommy appeared between them. Are we leaving tomorrow? William said. We're going to town. Going to make you officially my son. Will they try to take me? William knelt down, put his hands on Tommy's shoulders. I won't let that happen. Neither will your mother. We're a family now. Families protect each other. Tommy nodded. Then in a gesture that was becoming familiar, he hugged William, small arms wrapping tight, trust given completely. That night, William barely slept, ran through scenarios in his mind. What if the wagon broke down? What if they encountered Hyde at Crawford on the road? What if Judge Morton refused to perform the ceremony? What if he failed them the way he'd failed Marcus? Near dawn, he heard movement. Sarah rose from her blankets, moved to sit near the dying fire. William joined her. Can't sleep either, she asked. Too many what-ifs. Me too. She stared at the embers. What if this doesn't work? What if Crawford finds a way to take Tommy anyway? Then we fight harder. And if we lose, William didn't have an easy answer. Then at least we'll know we tried, that we didn't just accept it. Sarah turned to look at him. Her face in the dim light showed exhaustion and fear and something else. Determination, maybe. Or the beginnings of trust. Michael was a good man, she said quietly. But he was also easy, content. He wanted a simple life and was happy with what he had. She paused. You're not like that. You push, you question, you take responsibility even when it terrifies you. I don't know if that's a compliment. It is. She smiled slightly. Because Tommy and I need someone who won't just accept the world as it is. We need someone who will fight for what should be. I'll fight, William promised, whatever it takes. They sat together in the pre-dawn darkness, two people bound by necessity and shared fear and the fragile hope that they might build something real from desperate circumstances. When the sun rose, they loaded the wagon. The journey to Bozeman took 2 days. It should have taken one, but snow made the roads treacherous. The wagon moved slowly, wheels cutting through drifts, horses straining against the weight. William drove. Sarah sat beside him with Tommy bundled between them. The boy watched the landscape pass with wide eyes. He'd spent months hiding confined moving, only at night. Now he saw mountains and forests and open skying. It's big, Tommy said. Yes, it is, William agreed. Are there bad men out here? Some, but also good men and good women. The world has both. Tommy considered this. Which kind are you? The question caught William off guard. I try to be good, but I've made bad choices, so maybe I'm both. Mama says everybody makes mistakes, says what matters is fixing them. Your mama's smart. They stopped for the night at a line shack William knew, a small shelter used by cattlemen during roundups. It was empty this time of year. Cold but solid, protected from wind. They made camp inside, built a small fire, ate cold rations because they didn't want smoke attracting attention. Tommy fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the day. Sarah and William sat awake, taking turns keeping watch. Near midnight, William heard something. A horse, maybe two. Moving through the trees nearby, he signaled Sarah to silence, picked up his rifle, moved to the door. A voice called out from the darkness. "It's Jack Sullivan. Don't shoot." William opened the door cautiously. Jack emerged from the tree line alone, his horse breathing hard. "What are you doing here?" William asked. Jack dismounted. "Came to warn you. Crawford figured out you lied. He's got 3 more men. They're watching the roads into Bozeman." William's jaw tightened. "How did you know we'd be here?" "Because it's the smart route, and you're smart enough to use it." Jack glanced toward the shack. "The woman and boy inside?" "Yes," Jack nodded. "Good. Listen carefully. Crawford will have men at both main approaches to town, but there's a third way, through Miller's property to the east. Rough terrain, but his land connects to Bozeman's south side." "Why are you helping us?" Jack's face was hard to read in the darkness. "Because my father taught me that law and justice aren't always the same thing. Crawford's got law on his side, but you've got justice," he paused. "And because that boy deserves better than Fort Shaw School. Your father was a good man." "He was, and he'd want me to do this." Jack remounted. "Take Miller's route. Judge Morton's at the Silver Hotel through tomorrow. Get to him before Crawford does." "Jack, thank you." "Don't thank me. Just make sure that boy has a good life. Make sure my father's death led to something better than more death." Jack turned his horse. "And Harrow, we're even now, you and me. What happened to my father, that was tragedy. But what you're doing now, that's redemption. Don't waste it." He rode back into the darkness. William returned to the shack. Sarah was awake watching him. "Who was that, Jack Sullivan?" "He gave us a route around Crawford's surveillance." "Why would he do that?" "Because his father raised him right, even though I killed his father." Sarah studied William's face. "You've carried that guilt for over a year, but Jack just gave you absolution. Can you accept it?" William thought about Marcus Sullivan, about the storm and the decision and the weight he'd carried every day since. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I can try." They reached Bozeman the next afternoon, came in through Miller's property like Jack had suggested. The old rancher waved them through without questions. Some frontier courtesies still held. The town was bigger than William remembered. 600 people now, more buildings, more noise. The sound of civilization after months of isolation. People stared as they passed. A white man, an Indian woman, a mixed blood child. Not common, not completely rare either, but notable enough to draw attention. William drove straight to the Silver Hotel, tied the horses, and helped Sarah and Tommy down. "Wait here," he said. "No." Sarah's voice was firm. "We do this together." They entered the hotel together. The clerk behind the desk looked up. His eyes moved from William to Sarah to Tommy. Something dismissive flickered across his face. "We're looking for Judge Morton," William said. "Judge is busy." "This is important." "I'm sure it is." The clerk's tone suggested otherwise. "But the judge doesn't see people without appointments." William felt anger rising, started to argue, but Sarah placed a hand on his arm, stepped forward. "Please inform Judge Morton that we need to discuss a legal marriage and adoption. We have documentation and witnesses ready. If he's too busy, we'll wait, but we will see him." Her voice carried authority, not aggressive, just certain, the voice of someone who expected to be taken seriously. The clerk reconsidered. "Wait here." He disappeared up the stairs, returned 5 minutes later. "Judge will see you. Room 4. They climbed the stairs. Tommy stayed close to Sarah, nervous in the unfamiliar environment. Judge Morton was 62 years old, transplanted from Kansas. He'd brought law to Montana territory through sheer force of will and a reputation for fairness that transcended politics. He looked up from papers when they entered, studied them each in turn. "I'm William Harrow. This is Sarah Brennan and her son Tommy. We'd like to get married." Judge Morton's eyebrows rose. "You have documentation?" Sarah produced papers from her bag. Marriage certificate to Michael Brennan, Tommy's birth record, her own identification. The judge examined each carefully. "Mrs. Brennan, you're recently widowed." 7 months. "And you wish to remarry already?" "For legal protection of my son." From what Agent Crawford of the Indian Affairs Bureau, He wants to place Tommy in a mission school, separate him from me. Judge Morton's expression hardened slightly. Does Crawford have legal grounds? He claims my blood makes me unfit, but I was legally married to a U.S. citizen. My son is therefore a citizen. Crawford's authority shouldn't apply. And if you marry Mr. Harrow, then Tommy becomes Mr. Harrow's legal son, removing any ambiguity. The judge turned to William. Why are you doing this? It was the same question everyone asked. William gave the same answer. Because it's right. Because Tommy deserves protection. And because Crawford is abusing his authority. That's a political stance, Mr. Harrow. It's a human stance. Judge Morton studied him for a long moment, then looked at Sarah. Mrs. Brennan, are you being coerced? No, sir. This is my choice. Mr. Harrow, do you understand that marriage is permanent, that you're taking legal responsibility for this child? I do. And you're prepared for the social consequences. A mixed marriage will draw judgment. I'm prepared to deal with whatever comes. The judge sat back, considered. This feels convenient. Emergency marriages often are fraudulent. Before William could respond, the door opened. Jack Sullivan entered. Begging your pardon, Judge, but I'd like to speak on behalf of Mr. Harrow. Judge Morton frowned. This is highly irregular, Deputy. Yes, sir, but relevant. Jack moved into the room. I'm Jack Sullivan. My father was Marcus Sullivan. He died in 1874 due to Mr. Harrow's error in judgment during a storm. The room went very quiet. Mr. Harrow has carried that guilt ever since, removed himself from society, lived in isolation rather than risk harming anyone else. Jack's voice was steady. But when Mrs. Brennan and her son needed help, he chose to act despite his fear, chose responsibility over safety. He looked at William. If the man who killed my father can stand witness for me, I'd say his commitment is genuine. Judge Morton's expression shifted. You're willing to stand witness? Yes, sir, I've tracked Mrs. Brennan for Agent Crawford. I've seen her care for her son. I've seen Mr. Harrow's character. This marriage may be convenient, but it's also legitimate. The judge turned to Tommy. Son, do you want Mr. Harrow to be your father? Tommy nodded. He's already my papa. The paper just makes it official. Something in the judge's face softened. He looked at the three of them. A white man carrying guilt, an Indian woman fighting for her child, a mixed blood boy who'd found safety in unlikely circumstances. I'll perform the ceremony, Judge Morton said, but understand that I'll be watching. If I learn this was a fraud, I'll annul it and charge you both. It's not a fraud, Sarah said quietly. It's survival, and maybe something more. William reached for her hand. She took it. The ceremony was brief, 5 minutes of legal language. Do you take this woman? Do you take this man? By the authority vested in me. When it was done, Judge Morton prepared the documents. Marriage certificate dated November 29, 1875. Adoption papers making Thomas Brennan into Thomas Harrow. Jack signed as witness. So did the hotel clerk who'd been summoned. They were finishing when heavy footsteps sounded in the hall. The door burst open. Crawford stood there, red-faced and furious. 2 men flanked him. I have a federal warrant for the arrest of Sarah Brennan and seizure of Thomas Brennan as agency ward. Judge Morton stood. You're too late, Agent Crawford. Mrs. Brennan is now Mrs. Harrow, and Thomas is the legal son of William Harrow, U.S. citizen. Crawford's face went purple. This is a fraud, a sham marriage. Can you prove it? It's obvious. Obviousness is not evidence. The judge gathered the papers. You have no grounds to take the child, and if you try, you'll face charges for interfering with a citizen's family. This isn't over. Crawford's voice shook with rage. I'll appeal to federal authorities. Do so. Until then, you're done here. Luther Hayes appeared in the doorway behind Crawford. The tracker's face showed something almost like satisfaction. Crawford, Hayes said quietly, I'm done. Won't track for you anymore. What? You told me we were rescuing a boy from an unfit mother, but I've watched her. She's capable, loving. You just want to steal land. He turned to Judge Morton. Why, Crawford has a business partner waiting to buy the Brennan homestead cheap once it's declared abandoned. That's what this is really about. The judge's expression went cold. Is this true, Crawford? Crawford's silence was answer enough. "Get out of my hotel," Judge Morton said, "and out of my town. If I see you harassing this family again, I'll have Deputy Sullivan arrest you." Crawford left shaking with rage. Hayes tipped his hat to Sarah and followed. When they were gone, the room exhaled. Tommy looked up at William. "Are we safe now?" William lifted the boy. "Yes, we're safe." Sarah's eyes were wet. "Thank you, all of you." Judge Morton smiled. "Welcome to Bozeman, Mrs. Harrow. May your marriage bring you both happiness." They left the hotel as the sun set. A family now, legal and legitimate and protected by law. As they loaded the wagon, Jack approached one more time. "Harrow, one more thing." William turned. "There's someone who wants to meet you, tomorrow morning, at the cemetery." Jack's face was serious. "My father's widow. She heard what happened. She wants to talk." William's stomach dropped. "Martha?" "Yes, she'll be at his grave at 9. Jack paused. "Don't worry, she's not angry, she's proud." He walked away before William could ask what that meant. The cemetery sat on a hill overlooking Bozeman. 30 graves marked by wooden crosses and simple stones. The newer ones still showed raw earth. The older ones had grass growing over them, nature reclaiming what had been disturbed. William stood at the base of the hill. He'd left Sarah and Tommy at the hotel with instructions to wait for him. This was something he needed to do alone. 9 in the morning, the air was cold and still. His breath formed clouds that dissipated slowly. His hands felt numb, and not just from the temperature. He climbed the hill with heavy steps, each one bringing him closer to a conversation he'd spent 13 months dreading. Martha Sullivan stood beside a wooden cross. The inscription was simple: Marcus Sullivan, 1844 to 1874, beloved husband and father. She looked older than William remembered. Grief had carved lines around her eyes and mouth. Her dress was worn but clean, her hair pulled back in a practical bun. She held the hand of a boy about 11 years old. Jack's son, William realized. Marcus's grandson. Another boy stood on her other side. Maybe 9 years old, Samuel, the younger son. They all watched William approach. He stopped 10 feet away, couldn't make himself get closer. Martha studied him for a long moment. Her face showed no obvious anger, no hatred, just something tired and complicated. "Jack said you needed to meet me," William managed. His voice came out rough. "I needed to meet you," Martha corrected. "There's a difference." William waited. "After Marcus died, I spent months angry. At the storm, at you most of all." She looked at the grave. "You made a decision that killed my husband, that cost my sons their father, that left me alone and pregnant and terrified. I know, I'm sorry isn't enough, but I am." "No, sorry isn't enough." Martha's voice was steady. "But Jack told me what happened yesterday. Told me you married a woman to protect her son from Crawford. Told me you're taking responsibility for a child who isn't your blood." She looked at William directly. Marcus would have done the same thing. He believed children should be protected. All children, not just his own. William's throat tightened. "I can't forgive you for the decision you made," Martha continued. "That wound is too deep. But I can acknowledge what you're doing now. You're choosing to be responsible. You're choosing to build instead of hide. I hid for 13 months. And now you're not hiding." She glanced at her sons. "Boys, this is William Harrow. He was your father's trail boss. He made a bad decision that cost your father his life." Both boys stiffened. The older one, Jack's son, looked at William with guarded eyes. "But he's also a man who's trying to do better," Martha continued. "Who's protecting a child the way your father would have wanted children protected. That doesn't erase what happened, but it matters." She stepped closer to William, close enough that he could see the silver streaking her hair, the lines around her eyes, the weight she carried. "I'm going to stand witness for your marriage if anyone questions it. Not because I forgive you, but because that boy Tommy, he deserves a father who will choose to stay, who will choose responsibility over comfort." "Martha, I don't deserve that." "No, you don't." Her voice was firm but not cruel. "But that little boy deserves it. And Marcus would want me to choose the child's welfare over my own anger." She reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, a carved wooden horse, similar to the one Tommy carried, worn smooth with age and handling. "Marcus made this for Jack when he was 5. before we came to Montana. She pressed it into William's hand. Give this to Tommy. Tell him it's from a man who believed fathers should protect their sons. All sons. William stared at the carving, his vision blurred. Don't waste this chance, Harrow. Martha's voice softened slightly. Marcus died because you chose wrong. But you can choose right now, every day, for that boy and his mother. Make Marcus's death mean something. How? By being the man you should have been that day, careful, thoughtful, putting others before your own convenience. She looked at her sons. These boys grew up without a father. Don't let Tommy grow up the same way. Stay. Choose them. Every single day. William could only nod. Words wouldn't come. Martha turned back to the grave. I need a few minutes alone with Marcus. You should go. Your family is waiting for you. Your family. Two words that hit like a physical blow. William started down the hill, stopped halfway and turned back. Martha, thank you. She didn't turn around, just raised one hand in acknowledgement. William walked back to town with the wooden horse clutched in his hand. When he reached the hotel, Sarah was sitting in the lobby with Tommy beside her. The boy was drawing on paper the hotel clerk had given him. Simple sketches of horses and mountains and what might have been a family. Tommy looked up, saw William's face. What's wrong, Papa? William knelt down, showed him the carved horse. A man named Marcus Sullivan made this for his son. His wife wants you to have it. Tommy took the horse carefully, turned it in his small hands. Why? Because Marcus believed fathers should protect their sons, and she wants you to remember that you're protected now. Tommy looked at his own carved horse, then at the new one, held them together. Two horses from two different fathers brought together by circumstance and choice. I'll keep them both safe, Tommy said seriously. Sarah stood. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. What did Martha say? That I need to choose you and Tommy every day. That I can't waste this chance. Sarah touched his arm. Can you do that? Choose us every day. William thought about Marcus's grave, about Martha's lined face, about Tommy holding two carved horses like they were precious beyond measure. Yes, I can do that. They spent one more night in Bozeman, purchased supplies they'd need for winter, fabric for Sarah to make new clothes, food staples, ammunition, warm blankets. The stares continued, the whispers. William heard some of the comments. White man with a squaw. That boy's a half-breed. Shame. Good-looking man could do better. Sarah heard them too. Her face remained neutral, but William saw how her shoulders tightened, how she moved closer to Tommy, how she prepared to defend her son from words as much as actions. In the general store, the owner Klaus Schultz watched them carefully. German immigrant. Built his business through hard work and fair dealing. His wife Emma stood behind the counter, sharp-eyed and practical. You need help, Klaus asked. Supplies for winter, William said. Flour, salt, coffee, sugar. Klaus nodded, started gathering items. Emma came around the counter. You're the ones who got married yesterday, she said to Sarah. Not a question. A statement of fact. Yes, ma'am. Emma studied Sarah's face, then Tommy's, then William's. Judge Morton spoke well of you, said you were honest folk doing right by a child. We're trying, Sarah said quietly. Trying is enough. Emma smiled. My husband and I came here with nothing. People looked down on us because we spoke German, because we were different. We understand what it's like. She pulled fabric from a shelf. Blue wool, good quality. For the boy, he needs a warm coat. And you, Mrs. Harrow, you need a proper winter dress. This will do. We didn't ask for that, Sarah said. I know, but I'm giving it. Emma's voice was firm but kind. Welcome to Bozeman. Come back when you need more supplies. You'll always be welcome here. It was a small kindness, but after the stares and whispers, it felt enormous. They left town the next morning, the wagon loaded with supplies and hope in the fragile beginning of community acceptance. The journey home took a full day. The roads had frozen hard overnight. The wagon moved faster than it had coming in. Tommy sat between his parents, chattering about everything he'd seen in town. The buildings, the people, the bugs running in the street. William and Sarah rode mostly in silence, but it was comfortable silence now. The silence of two people who'd stopped performing for each other and started simply existing together. When the cabin came into view, Sarah exhaled. Home, she said softly. William glanced at her. She'd called it home. Not his cabin, not a temporary shelter. Home. Yes, he agreed. Home. The next week settled into routine. December brought heavy snows and temperatures that dropped below zero. William and Sarah worked together to winterize the cabin, stuffed gaps with moss and cloth, banked snow against the north wall for extra insulation, made sure the wood pile stayed ahead of their consumption. Tommy thrived. The fear that had marked his first weeks gradually faded. He talked constantly now, asked endless questions, followed William everywhere. William taught him practical skills: how to tell if ice on the water trough was safe to break, how to read animal tracks in snow, how to sharpen a knife properly, how to care for leather so it didn't crack in the cold. Tommy absorbed everything, took notes in his own mind, creating pictures and symbols to remember lessons. Sarah transformed the cabin, not drastically. William's essential organization remained, but she added touches that made it feel lived in. Curtains on the windows, dried herbs hanging from the rafters, a rug sheet woven from scraps near the stove. She also took over the cooking. William had survived on functional food. Sarah created meals that actually tasted good, used the herbs she knew from her mother's teaching, combined them with Irish recipes Michael had taught her. The result was something uniquely hers. One evening, William came in from checking the horses to find the cabin filled with the smell of stew. Real stew, with vegetables and meat and seasoning that made his mouth water. That smells incredible, he said. Sarah smiled. A real smile, not polite, not careful, just pleased. Michael taught me his mother's recipe, but I added sage and wild onion. Makes it better. They ate together at the table, Tommy between them. The boy ate with enthusiasm, then asked to be excused to play with his horses by the fire. Sarah and William lingered over coffee, the comfortable silence returning. I need to ask you something, Sarah said. William waited. The room you cleared for us, Tommy and me, we're still using it separately. I wanted to give you privacy, let you have your own space. I appreciate that, but... She paused, choosing words carefully. If this marriage is going to be real, not just legal, eventually we need to share space. Share a life, all of it. William's heart rate picked up. Are you ready for that? I think so, but I need to know what you want. What did he want? William had spent so long avoiding to wanting anything that the question felt foreign. But sitting across from this woman who'd organized his chaos and cooked him meals and taught his son and filled his empty cabin with life, he knew the answer. I want this to be real, he said. I want to build a life with you, not just keep you safe, actually build something together. Sarah's face softened. Then we should start acting like a real family, which means sharing a room, sharing a bed, sharing everything. Are you sure? Michael and I started as practical partners. The love came later, with time, with shared work, with choosing each other every day. She met his eyes. I'm choosing you, William. Every day. The question is whether you're choosing me. I am. No hesitation, no doubt. I'm choosing you. Sarah stood, extended her hand. Then come to bed, our bed, and let's start building this life properly. William took her hand, let her lead him to the room that had been hers and Tommy's. That would now be theirs. Tommy was already asleep by the fire, wrapped in blankets, the two carved horses tucked under his arm. Their wedding night came weeks after their wedding, but it came at the right time, when they were ready, when it meant something beyond legal protection. The winter deepened, Christmas came and went. They celebrated with a meal and simple gifts. William carved Tommy a whole herd of horses. Sarah made William a shirt from the blue wool Emma Schultz had given them. Tommy drew pictures for both of them, simple but heartfelt. January brought a crisis. Tommy woke one morning burning with fever. His breathing was labored, his skin flushed and hot. Sarah's training kicked in immediately. She prepared herb teas, created steam from boiling water to help him breathe, kept him warm, but not too warm, monitored his temperature constantly. William felt helpless, watched his wife work, watched his son struggle, remembered that bad decisions led to death. That responsibility meant failure was always possible. What if he doesn't get better? William asked on the second night. Then we deal with it. Sarah's voice was steady even though exhaustion lined her face. But giving up helps no one. We fight for him. Together. I don't know how to help. Keep the fire perfect. Melt snow for fresh water. Hold him when he's scared. That's helping. William did those things. Small tasks that felt inadequate. But Sarah was right. Tommy would wake from fever dreams and reach for him, would calm when William held him, would sleep better with both parents near. On the third day the fever broke, Tommy's temperature dropped, his breathing eased. He opened his eyes and asked for food. Sarah cried, actually cried, let the tears fall without trying to hide them. William held them both, his wife and his son, his family, and felt gratitude so intense it was almost painful. Thank you, he said to Sarah. For what? For knowing what to do, for not giving up, for being strong enough for all of us. Sarah looked at him. That's what partners do. Sometimes you're strong, sometimes I'm strong. We take turns. Tommy recovered fully over the next week. The experience changed something in William some, made him realize that responsibility didn't always mean failure, that sometimes making the right choices and working hard was enough. That night, after Tommy was asleep, Sarah had news. I'm pregnant. William stared at her. You're sure? Yes, maybe 2 months along. Baby should come in September or October. William's emotions were complicated. Joy, fear, hope, terror. Are you happy? Sarah asked. I'm terrified. Me too, but also happy. Tommy will have a sibling, a brother or sister born into safety. She placed her hand on her still flat belly. This child will never know running, will never know hiding, will only know home. William placed his hand over hers. We'll make sure of that. The spring brought newest challenges and new blessings. The snow melted gradually. The creek swelled with runoff. The valley turned green and alive. William began expanding the cabin, adding another room for the coming baby, working long hours with Sarah, helping when she could. Tommy handed tools and helped in the way 5-year-olds help, mostly by asking questions and getting underfoot. In April, a letter arrived, delivered by a rider who'd stopped at the cabin on his way through the territory. It was from the Helena Land Office, about Sarah's original homestead claim near Fort Benton. Agent Crawford had filed a challenge, claimed the land was abandoned and should revert to federal control. Sarah read the letter twice. Her face went pale. That land has Michael's grave on it, she said quietly. I can't let Crawford take it. Then we fight for it, William said. What do we need to do? Appear at a hearing in Helena, May 15th. Prove we haven't abandoned the claim. Prove we intend to maintain it. Can you travel with the baby? I'm only 4 months along. I'll manage. They made the journey in late April, 240 miles on rough roads. It took 8 days. They camped along the way. Tommy thought it was an adventure. Sarah endured the discomfort without complaint. Helena was larger than Bozeman, more official, more intimidating. The land office was a proper building with clerks and files and the bureaucratic machinery of government. The hearing was held in a small room. A land office official presided. Crawford was there with a lawyer. Sarah and William represented themselves. Crawford's argument was simple. Sarah had abandoned the claim, hadn't been there in months. Therefore, it should be opened for proper settlement. William countered. Mrs. Harrow fled for her life after her husband was murdered. She was being pursued by Agent Crawford, who wanted to forcibly separate her from her son. She maintained her intention to return, as evidenced by letters to the Fort Benton postmaster. He produced the letters Sarah had written, evidence of her continued interest in the property. The lawyer tried to argue that a woman of mixed blood couldn't properly manage land anyway. William stood. Mrs. Harrow is married to a U.S. citizen. That's me. I'm willing to work both properties. Hire help if needed. The land won't be abandoned. You can't possibly manage property 200 miles apart, the lawyer said. I can in summer, and I'll hire a caretaker for winter. The point is, the claim is maintained. Mrs. Harrow hasn't abandoned it. She was driven away by your client's abuse of authority. At that moment, the door opened. Jack Sullivan entered. Sorry to interrupt, Jack said, but I have evidence relevant to this case. The official frowned. What evidence? Jack placed documents on the table. Investigation records from the raid that killed Michael Brennan. The raiders were caught and tried. They testified that Crawford's business partner had hired them to drive settlers off valuable land. Silence filled the room. Agent Crawford knew about this, Jack continued. He's been using his authority to clear land for his partner's profit. Sarah Brennan's claim is valuable. Good water, good soil. Crawford wanted it empty so his partner could buy it cheap. Crawford's face went purple. That's slander. It's documented fact. Jack remained calm. I can provide witness testimony if needed. The official studied the documents, looked at Crawford, looked at Sarah and William. Mrs. Harrow, your claim is upheld. You have 6 months to establish regular presence on the land or assign a legal proxy. He turned to Crawford. And you, agent, are under investigation for corruption. Get out of my office. They won. The land was safe. Michael's grave was protected. Outside the building, William thanked Jack again. Why do you keep helping us? William asked. Jack looked at him steadily. Because my father taught me that law should serve justice, not the other way around. And because you're doing right by that boy. That matters more than old grudges. They shook hands. Jack rode away. William suspected they'd meet again. The territory was small enough that paths crossed frequently. The journey home was lighter. Sarah talked about developing Michael's land, about planting wheat and running cattle, about hiring seasonal help, about building something that would last. That land will be Tommy's inheritance, she said. And this new baby's, both of them, equal shares, something real they can build on. William thought about that, about legacy, about building something that outlasted individual lives. We're creating a family, he said, not just you and me and the children, but something bigger, something that will keep growing. Sarah smiled. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. Summer was good to them. The expanded cabin took shape. The valley grass grew thick. The horses thrived. Tommy learned to ride properly. Sarah's belly grew round and obvious. In June, they made another trip to Bozeman for supplies. The Schultz family greeted them warmly. Emma fussed over Sarah's pregnancy, offered advice and old remedies. Other townspeople were mixed, some friendly, some cold, but enough friendly that William and Sarah felt they were building connections, creating a place in the community. Judge Morton stopped William on the street. How's married life, Harrow? Good, sir, very good. The judge smiled. I'm glad. You proved me wrong. I thought your marriage might be a sham, but I've heard good reports. You're building something real. We're trying. That's all any of us can do. Keep trying. The baby came in early November. A boy. Strong and healthy and loud. Sarah's labor was long but manageable. Emma Schultz came to help, having made the journey specifically to be there for the birth. William waited outside, nervous and useless. Tommy stayed with him, equally nervous. Is Mama going to be okay? Tommy asked. Yes, this is normal. Babies take time. Was I this much trouble? Probably more. William smiled. But you were worth it. When Emma finally called him in, William entered to find Sarah exhausted but smiling. She held a tiny bundle. Meet your son, she said. William took the baby carefully. The child was impossibly small, red-faced and wrinkled and perfect. What should we name him? Sarah asked. William thought about Marcus Sullivan, about the man who died because of William's mistake, about Martha Sullivan who'd given him a second chance, about Jack Sullivan who'd helped them multiple times despite having every reason not to. Daniel, William said. Daniel Marcus Harrow. Sarah's eyes widened. Marcus, after Jack's father. Martha told me to make Marcus's death mean something, to choose right every day. This feels like the right choice. Sarah touched the baby's face. Daniel Marcus Harrow. Welcome to the world. Tommy was allowed in next. He approached slowly, awed by the tiny human. This is your brother, Sarah said. Daniel, you're going to help us take care of him. Tommy reached out one finger. Daniel grabbed it with a surprisingly strong grip. Hi, Daniel, Tommy said softly. I'm Tommy. I'll protect you, just like Papa protects us. William felt something break open in his chest, not pain, the opposite, like a door that had been locked for years finally opening completely. He was a father, not just legally, really, to both these boys, and the weight of that responsibility didn't terrify him. It anchored him. The winter of 1876 into 77 was the best of William's life. The cabin was crowded now, 4 people. A baby who woke at all hours. Tommy, who was simultaneously helpful and underfoot. Sarah, who managed everything with grace William couldn't comprehend. They took turns with night feedings. Took turns keeping Tommy occupied when the baby needed attention. Took turns being the strong one when the other was exhausted. It was hard. It was wonderful. It was real life in all its messy, beautiful complexity. In February, William took Tommy to Michael's grave. They'd hired a caretaker for the Fort Benton property, an older widower who needed work and a place to stay. But William wanted Tommy to see his first father's resting place. They stood in the snow beside the simple wooden cross. "Do you remember him?" William asked. "A little. He was big, and his laugh was loud." Tommy was quiet for a moment. "He used to carry me on his shoulders. He loved you very much." "I know. Mama tells me stories." Tommy looked up at William. "But you love me too, right?" "More than I thought possible." "Can I love both of you, my first papa and you?" "You should love both of us. He gave you life. I'm just trying to help you live it well." Tommy nodded, placed his wooden horse, the one Michael had carved at the base of the cross. "So first papa knows I remember him." They stood in silence, father and son, connected by choice rather than blood, which made it no less real. The years that followed brought steady growth. Tommy grew tall and strong. Daniel learned to walk, then talk, then get into everything. The ranch expanded. William hired seasonal help. They ran cattle on both properties, built a real business. Sarah managed it all with the organizational skills she'd learned at the trading post. Kept books, planned seasons, made sure they stayed ahead financially. They made trips to Bozeman regularly, became known in town. The Harrow family, interracial but stable, hardworking, honest. The kind of people the community came to respect even if some never fully accepted them. Jack Sullivan became Sheriff of Bozeman in 1880. Stopped by the ranch occasionally, always welcomed. He and William developed a friendship built on mutual respect and shared understanding of second chances. Martha Sullivan remarried in 1882, moved to California with her new husband and her sons. Before she left, she visited the ranch one final time. She found William working on the barn. Tommy, now 12, was helping him. Daniel, 5, was playing nearby with wooden animals. "I'm leaving Montana," Martha said without preamble. "Jack told me. I hope you'll be happy." Martha watched Tommy work, watched how William taught him with patience, watched how Tommy called him Papa without hesitation. "You did it," she said quietly. "You made Marcus's death mean something. You took responsibility. You built a good life. I had help. We all need help." She turned to face him fully. "I want you to know that I've let go of the anger. I forgive you, William. Completely. You've earned it." William felt tears start, blinked them back. "Thank you. That means more than I can say." Martha smiled. "Be happy. Keep choosing them every day. That's enough." She left. William never saw her again. But her words stayed with him. The ranch thrived. By 1890, they had 40 head of cattle, 12 horses, and fields of wheat on Michael's original homestead. They'd built a real house to replace the cabin, still standing in the same spot, but larger, with rooms for both boys, a kitchen where Sarah could work comfortably, a porch where William could sit in the evening and watch the valley. Tommy grew into a man. At 20, he was tall and capable. He'd inherited Sarah's organizational mind and William's work ethic. He talked about starting his own family someday, about building his own ranch on a portion of the land. Daniel, 13, was more bookish, loved reading, talked about becoming a teacher. William and Sarah encouraged both paths. Success looked different for different people. Sarah aged gracefully. Her hair showed silver by her 40th birthday. Her face had lines, but she remained strong and sharp in the center of their family. William, at 57, felt the weight of years in his joints, but he was healthy, happy, more content than he'd ever imagined possible. One evening in early 1900, William sat on the porch with Sarah. They'd just celebrated their 30th anniversary, 30 years since that rushed ceremony in Judge Morton's hotel room, 30 years of choosing each other every day. "Did you ever think we'd make it this long?" Sarah asked. "Honestly, no. I thought I'd fail you somehow, make a bad decision that would destroy everything. But you didn't. I got lucky. And I had you to keep me steady. Sarah took his hand. We kept each other steady. That's how partnerships work. They sat in comfortable silence, the sun setting over the valley they'd made their own. The ranch bustling with activity, Tommy's 3 children running in the yard, Daniel's 2 joining them. 3 generations now. Marcus Sullivan would be proud, Sarah said quietly. You think so? I know so. You took his death and made it mean something. Created life instead of more death. That's what he would have wanted. William thought about the storm in 1874, about the decision that had haunted him for years, about how that failure had led through strange paths to all of this. I'm grateful, he said, for all of it, even the hard parts, even the mistakes, because they led here. Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. Me too. The years continued. William made it to his 73rd birthday. Died peacefully in bed with Sarah beside him. Tommy and Daniel and all the grandchildren nearby. His last words were simple. I chose well. Every day. I chose well. Sarah lived another 7 years, died at 71. Was buried next to William on a hill overlooking the ranch. The same ranch that had started as a lonely cabin in one man's desperate attempt at isolation. Tommy took over the ranch, ran it successfully, passed it to his children, who passed it to theirs. The land stayed in the family, grew with each generation, became known throughout Montana as good land managed by good people. And in 1939, William Harrow's great-grandson stood beside a barn that was 64 years old and listened to a story about choice and responsibility and the legacy that one winter's decision had created. The sun had nearly set by the time William finished speaking. Robert held the wooden horse carved in 1875, turned it in his hands the way Tommy had turned it decades ago, the way Daniel had played with it, the way generations had held it and passed it on. So you weren't my blood grandfather, Robert said slowly. No, but I was Tommy's father in every way that mattered. And Tommy was your grandfather. So the connection is real, even if it's not biological. Robert looked at the old barn. The ranch spread around them. 4 generations of family built on a foundation of a desperate choice in a winter storm. What made you decide to help them, really, when you could have turned them away? William thought about it. How to explain 64 years of understanding in a way an 18-year-old facing war could comprehend. Tommy called me Papa, he said finally, when he thought I couldn't hear, when he was half asleep and confused and scared. He called me Papa. That's it. One word, that's everything, because in that moment I had to choose. Let him keep calling me that and become what he needed, or turn him away and stay safe and alone. William looked at his great-grandson. You're going to face choices in this war, moments where you have to decide who you're going to be. Choose the hard thing. Choose responsibility. Choose the people who depend on you. That's what makes a man. That's what builds a legacy. Robert's hand closed around the wooden horse. I'm scared. Good. Fear means you understand the stakes, but don't let fear make your decisions. Let your values make them. What if I fail? Then you get up and try again and again until you get it right. William placed a hand on Robert's shoulder. I failed Marcus Sullivan. Cost him his life. But I didn't let that failure be my only story. I chose to do better. You can too. Robert nodded, blinked back tears. I'll come home. I promise. I know you will, because you're a hero. We keep our promises. We choose family. We build things that last. They stood together as night fell. 2 men separated by decades but connected by story, by choice, by the invisible threads that bind families together across generations. In the distance, the ranch house showed lights in the windows. Robert's parents, his siblings, his cousins. 3 generations still living on land that Tommy Harrow had inherited, that Daniel Harrow had helped maintain, that their children had expanded. All of it built on a foundation of one man choosing to protect a desperate woman and her child in the winter of 1875. Grandpa, Robert said, thank you for telling me this. Thank you for listening. Now go. Your mother's making supper, and tomorrow you start a journey. You need rest. Robert hugged the old man, held on tight, then walked toward the house, the carved horse in his pocket. William stood alone in the gathering dark. 99 years old, his body worn but his mind still sharp. He thought about Sarah, gone now 9 years, about Tommy, who died in 32, about Daniel, who still ran his portion of the ranch with his children, about all the choices and chances and moments that had led to this. The barn door creaked. William turned to close it. For a moment, memory overlapped present. He saw Sarah stepping out of the trees, saw Tommy's wide, frightened eyes, saw the exact moment when he'd chosen to open his door instead of sending them away. The moment that had changed it everything. William smiled, closed the barn door, and walked toward his house, toward family and warmth and the legacy of a winter's choice that had echoed through 64 years and would continue echoing long after he was gone. The wooden horse that Marcus Sullivan had carved for his son Jack, that Jack's mother Martha had given to Tommy, that Tommy had carried and loved and eventually passed to his children, that had traveled through 3 generations and was now heading off to war with a 4th. A symbol of connection, of family formed by choice rather than blood, of legacy built on daily decisions to choose love over fear, responsibility over safety, connection over isolation. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of pine and snow and the promise of winter. Montana winter. The kind that had trapped William and Sarah and Tommy together all those years ago. The kind that had forced them to become a family because survival required it. And then once survival was assured, had allowed them to choose each other. Daily, deliberately, building something real from desperate beginnings. The house lights grew brighter as William approached. He could hear voices inside, laughter, the sounds of family. He'd started with nothing but guilt and isolation. He'd ended with everything that mattered. And somewhere he liked to think Marcus Sullivan was watching. Proud that his death had led to life, that his son had helped create a family, that his memory had been honored through the naming of Daniel Marcus Harrow, who'd grown into a good man and raised good children of his own. William reached the porch, paused one more time to look back at the valley. Tomorrow Robert would leave for war, would face his own choices and challenges and moments of fear. But tonight they were all together, all home, all safe, and that was enough. That was everything. William Harrow opened his door and stepped inside to join his family. The winter of 1875 had been the coldest he'd ever known, but it had also been the beginning of the warmest life he could have imagined. And 64 years later, that warmth still filled every corner of the home he'd built.